Welcome to the Show Me Casey Schools podcast, where we help families make well informed decisions about their child's education. I'm your host for today, Nina Ward, and I have Danielle Dispenza, Director of School Navigation, here with me. What's going on, Danielle?
Another day.
Another day.
That's right. Good to hang out. We didn't see each other today.
I know. It's really weird.
Did it throw you off?
It is.
I wondered if it was going to throw us off. So we, of course, have a really great work environment where we can work from home a day or two a week. And I always try to break my week up. And so, we didn't see each other today. So now we're here.
Yeah.
Together.
I love it.
Yes, me too.
Today we're talking about student transition. So just for our listeners, it's the top of March right now. School offers have gone out from a lot of our public schools, public charter schools. KCPS has sent out offers. And that typically happens year to year around this time. Late February, early March is when families can typically expect to receive those offers. So with that, there's a lot of conversation around school transitions. You know, we have the new kindergarten families preparing to come into kindergarten, and they're getting excited about that. So I thought we would spend some time today really talking about the transitions from each grade level and kind of what that can look like moving into elementary, from elementary to middle school to high school, and so on. So I do want to take a minute to recap and make a plug real quick for our first episode. If you haven't seen that, make sure you go back and watch or listen to that, because we really dive into how to find the right school for your student. And so in that episode, we really break down the steps to doing that. So we want to learn, we want to search, we want to experience, and then we want to apply to each school.
That's right.
So again, if you have not looked at that episode or listened to it, go back and listen to that. But today, after you've gone through all those steps, after you've applied and you've received your offer, you've accepted an offer and you're enrolled in a school, I want to kind of talk about what you can do to really start to prepare yourself and your student for their transition into their next grade level.
Pre-K to kindergarten or at home to kindergarten is such an exciting time.
It is, and it can get really emotional for families. I know, like, you're preparing for, you've had your baby this whole time, and you're so excited to send them off to school, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. I did used to work at a charter school, and so it would be really emotional for some families. Like, we would have to comfort some parents on the first day of school when they're dropping off their little one, understandably so. But also, sometimes I would get a lot of questions over the summer for families who were enrolling, asking questions around what to do to prepare their student for kindergarten.
And I think, so step one in this transition process, as you have already pointed out, you've received an offer. You're probably in the midst right now of getting those documents together to finalize that enrollment or registration, paperwork with the school, but communication is key. So making sure that your updated, preferred phone number, your updated preferred email address is what's going on to those documents. And so many schools utilize the communication apps or email blasts, newsletters. And you want to make sure that you have provided them with your proper contact so that you will get the invites for all of these things that we're going to talk about. So I literally just got a message when we were sitting down here from the elementary school principal that was like, guess what's coming up? Kindergarten Roundup.
Kindergarten Roundup. Oh,
I know, it's so sweet. And so Kindergarten Roundup oftentimes happens in the spring prior to when your student is going to start kindergarten. It's another opportunity to be able to go into the school, and they can be very like self-led. I know that the kids' school has done scavenger hunts before for the whole family, where they find the gym and they find the bathroom and the library. And it's just to familiarize yourself as a parent and then your student. And as we have talked about all along, be excited and happy,
Right.
even though secretly we're dying inside and we just want to cry
Send our
about
babies
it.
off. Yeah. And so some of these things I think it's important to know also apply for students entering other grade levels also, right? So we have some schools that transition at different grade levels. And so sometimes your student may be entering a new school at fifth grade or sixth or seventh grade. And so sometimes schools are offering opportunities for open houses, even with kindergarten roundup. Like just keep an eye out. Sometimes those things, sometimes it's kindergarten roundup. I've seen some schools have ice cream socials or,
Open
back to
house.
school night, open house. Those things all just provide an opportunity, like we talked about in our first episode, to experience the school. And so in this case, typically you're enrolled and you're ready to go for the next year, and it's an opportunity to kind of come in, experience the school, to your point, get acclimated to the surroundings of the school building, get the student familiar with what it looks like being in the classroom, things like that. So it's a great opportunity to start engaging for families and also the students. But I do want to take some time to kind of talk about what some of those transitions can look like at home, especially for our pre-K to kindergarten transition. So one of the questions I used to get a lot when I was working in the school space was, do they take naps? My students taking a nap this whole time. Do they take naps?
Yeah. And it was never more poignantly put than when our oldest was starting kindergarten, and we went to one of the parent orientation night, right after school had started. And her sweet little 5'5" cute kindergarten teacher in her cardigan looked at all of us and said, "This isn't your kindergarten." And I was like,
whatever you did, we're not doing here.
That's right. So those nap times is my point. Like many schools are going to incorporate some downtime in the afternoon, but
Right.
we're at an all day, kindergarten schedule. I had a parent email me a couple weeks ago about kindergarten search and mentioned that, an all day kindergarten option would be, their priority. And I hadn't gotten that one in a while.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone to all day kindergarten. I
Right.
actually don't know of a school district
That's doing half days.
surrounding Kansas City that is doing half days anymore. Even though that was like recent past that some of that has changed.
Right.
So we're there, and those nap times aren't going to happen. There may be some quiet time or a little bit of rest time. And I know at the beginning of the school year, sometimes kiddos will fall asleep during that time frame. But that's one of those parent things, as you wanted to kind of point out, that we can help contribute in preparedness for our student. Our student doesn't need to know all of it, but we can start shrinking those nap times down to try to build that stamina so that they're not quite as dependent, and adjusting the wake up time and the bedtime, however far in advance you feel like that needs to happen.
Right.
We're going to have daylight savings this Sunday.
Yeah, so we're all going to be doing some transitioning.
That's right.
And waking up at different times. I think that's a really good point, though, with preparing students for the routine of school, right? And so they may not necessarily be in a classroom right now, but there are things that we could be doing to just kind of get them familiarized with the routine of waking up, preparing for the day, understanding that they're going to go somewhere different and spend a large chunk of their day. Because even that's a transition, right? Especially for our kiddos who have not been away from home. Maybe they're not in a pre-K or childcare setting. So maybe they've just kind of been used to waking up, whenever, and not really having a schedule. I think that's really something that families can do to try to help prepare students, and also prepare yourself, right? Like getting up, getting the student ready, getting in the habit of, going somewhere, dropping off, maybe waking up one day and dropping off with grandma or a relative or a loved one, just to get in the habit of what that may feel like during the day. Because I'm sorry, parents, but some schools have rules on if parents can come in the building for the first day of school. And that's really tough for some folks.
It is. And I think that it's always good to prepare ourselves that it's okay. We talked about this, right? I mean, remember I told you that the first time. So I want to plug an opportunity that exists in schools, and then how it didn't change the first day of school for me. So many of our schools have emerging kindergarten summer school options.
Yeah.
And that, if it works for your family, is a great chance for your student to be able to get into the school without the pressures of the actual school year, because oftentimes summer school has more of a club feel to it or camp feel to it. We've got some
Right.
special themes. We're getting to play a little bit more, but they get to learn what it means to go to the cafeteria to eat lunch,
Right.
know where the bathroom is, fall in love with the playground because it's every kid's favorite part
Right.
of their day, right? And so our oldest, she did that emerging kindergarten summer school program, and it was so much fun. But you better bet that that first day of school, I took her in and I held my composure and I dropped her off. And then as soon as I started to walk myself home, I just cried to
Did
myself.
you make it out of the door
I
of
did
the
make
building?
it
Did
out
you
of-
make it out? It's just like, just don't do it in front of them. Just don't do
it
it
in front of them. But and she was one of those kiddos that it was like, okay, see you later.
Peace out. I'm out of here.
Then
Bye,
it's
Mom.
like the knife in your back and it's twisting and you're like, aren't you gonna miss
Because in
me?
a weird way, we're like, we don't want our kids to be clingy, but you are kind of like, you gonna miss me? Do you need me? It's like, no, they don't. They're good. Bye. One other thing that I think is also helpful is, working on familiarizing students with their names, going over letters, the spelling of their names, different things like that. Just kind of help them in preparing for what they'll be doing and working on in that kindergarten year also. So I have a thing.
Spill it.
Parents, make sure your student knows their name. And make sure you communicate with the teacher what their preferred name is. Because we've had some situations where a kiddo said a name that wasn't on the roster and nobody knew if this was the right kid or not.
Right.
So we want to make sure that if they have a preferred name, we can absolutely make those accommodations.
I have one of those kids.
But I need to know who TT is.
That's right.
Like, I need to know that TT has another name that's going to show up on my roster.
Yes.
Just make sure everybody's clear. But also, we want teachers to know what students prefer to be called as well.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. I mean, parents will ask often, kindergarten readiness. It's one of those educational buzzwords and it's thrown around like crazy. And really, what is kindergarten readiness? And Nina doesn't want you to, I don't want you to, and kindergarten teachers do not want you to go out and buy the 400-page workbook and sit your cute little kindergartner down and make them do all of these workbook pages and so on and so forth. Like, you don't have to do that.
No.
What's important is understanding what your child's going to be walking into, and that's learning how to be a group learner.
That's right.
So participating in the story time that happens at your local public library if
Yeah.
they're not attending a pre-K. And that's so pre-K, so much of pre-K is learning how to be a group learner, learning how to learn from an adult other than your parent or guardian, how to walk in a line, how to sit in a chair at a table,
That's right.
open or unzip your lunchbox, just little tiny things like that that's empowerment for a 4 or 5-year-old, like that, being self-sufficient and being able to put their coat on by themselves, even if they can't zip it yet. Those are the types of things that if they can do those things, that's what's being prepared.
Right. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
It doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
And I think sometimes we do when we say things like kindergarten readiness. You're not in the education space. You're kind of like, what does that mean?
Oh, it's so overwhelming. And you think that your child needs to come into kindergarten
Writing sentences.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And that's when that parent or guardian orientation night that generally doesn't include students, that's an opportunity for you to come in after the school year has started and hear about what your student is going to be learning about at any grade level. That happens in any grade level. Every
Right.
year you come in, you hear from the teachers, and you're going to get an insider scoop from your child's teacher on what the curriculum is going to look like and some of those high level things.
Right.
For kindergarten, clearly, you're going to want to know you're a first timer, oftentimes, and well, you're a first timer with your first kiddo, and so you're going to want to know those things, but it's also helpful knowing when they're going to start long division and multiplication and dividing fractions with uncommon denominators. For the love
prepare
of all
yourself.
things,
Prepare
please do
yourself,
not make me
parents.
help with that homework ever again.
I can't tell you how many times I see posts from families complaining about new math. It's hilarious to me.
Oh yeah, no, we remember.
So prepare yourselves for that. So like some of this is not just like preparing the student. It's also preparing ourselves. Like to your point of like, your daughter's kindergarten teacher, things look different than they looked when we were in school. And so getting adjusted to that will really help you on this journey, because if not, you're going to overwhelm yourself wondering why things don't look the way they look when you were in elementary.
Yes. And I will, to your point, Nina, originally, I have the workbook in front of me. We have some of these prompts, of course, in the workbook about the logistics of your household, and that being such a huge consideration when you were on your school search.
Right.
But now that you've decided where your child's going to go to school, I also need you to revisit the logistics.
Yes.
Being prepared as parents and caregivers means that our students are prepared. And so if they're going to ride the bus, again, making sure that the communication stuff is updated so you're getting notified.
Right.
And then doing some of those, dry runs, whether it's walking to the bus stop where it's going to be once you've figured that out. And I think the last level set that I'll add into all of this for families is that oftentimes this information is going to be shared with you a couple of weeks before school starts.
Yeah.
So I know you're ready for it in June.
They're ready for it now.
They
want it in spring. They want the info
school
now.
Staff is trying to wrap up this school year.
Right.
They need to take a breather, and you're going to get that stuff in August. So that whole month of August, if school's starting on August 15th, middle of August, like that's really your go time.
Right.
And being prepared for things.
Right.
And so I think that that's just, again, helpful to put all of that into like perspective.
Yeah, they're not late, families. It's like, it's July. Why haven't I heard anything? They're on break.
That's right.
They're coming back. You'll get all the information. And I agree. August is a great time, beginning of August, to really start, practicing those routines, getting everybody prepared, getting yourself prepared for what those transitions are going to look like. And honestly, like making sure you enjoy your time. It goes really, really fast. I feel like my daughter was in kindergarten last year. She's a freshman in high school. It goes quickly. So like just absorbing and taking all the time you can and just really enjoying your time with them and enjoying those transitions when it's happening, right? Like enjoying the first day of kindergarten, snapping all the cute pictures. Do it all. Make sure you completely just absorb all of that's happening. So we spend a lot of time talking about kindergarten because they're just so cute, and it's just this.
And it's a huge one, right?
It's a huge transition. But we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about middle school and high school transitions. Dun dun dun! All right, we'll be back. Okay, we're back, and we are talking about student transitions, transitioning into elementary school, transitioning from one grade level to another, and how we can help prepare our students and also help prepare ourselves for everything that comes with those transitions and moving into the next step with our students' education journey. So we talked a little bit about what that transition may look like, going from pre-K or early childhood environment into a kindergarten environment. But I want to take a little bit of time to talk about what the transition may look like going from elementary to middle school.
Oh, this one's brutal.
This is a big one for the students, though. They get really hyped up about going to middle school.
It is. And you mentioned earlier, and so it bears repeating, that in this complex KC Nat, like school landscape that this can be a different grade level depending on the school that your child attends.
Right.
We have a couple of schools that end in 4th grade, and then we have a couple of schools that start in 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Many of our elementary schools go through 6th grade. So then we have that 7th grade. So that's what also adds to this a little bit, because it's not just this universal.
Right. Everybody transitions at the same grade, same time. It
Like-
looks different depending on what school system you're in.
Yeah, exactly. But even if you're in a K through 12 public charter, let's say, Nina, and you're not really going on a school search again during this time frame, your students likely going to be transitioning to a new building for that middle high school experience. And so that's the transition, is this new place. But most of all, I mean, middle school is big because it's going to look so much different.
It's a new set of expectations. It's different,
across the board.
Students are used to being in a single classroom most of the day. Typically, they'll have specials, things like music, art, PE, that they're going to another teacher for. But the bulk of their day, they're with their 20 some odd classmates and 1 to 2 teachers, depending on, again, what school setting you're in.
Yeah.
And then once we go into middle school, it's changing a little bit. They have a lot more teachers that they're spending a little bit more time with. You're not necessarily spending the whole day with one teacher and one large group of students. You're transitioning in and out of classrooms. You have a schedule that you have to maintain. So it can be a lot. And I will say kudos to schools, because I think that a lot of schools have done some really good work of aiding students in that transition. I know when I transitioned to middle school, it was like, here's your schedule. Go figure it out.
You'll be fine.
Don't do anything. It was like you felt like you were being tossed out into the woods.
That's right. Well, and I liken it to, think about sometimes if you pull the reverse on something for a second. So think about going from having one boss or one supervisor, or in my child's case right now, I have a 5th grader. They're departmentalized. So one teacher teaches math and science, the other one teaches ELA and social studies, right?
Right.
And so that's called, departmentalized in the world of education. But think about if you go from having one boss to having 7 bosses.
Oh my goodness.
Right? As adults, we would lose our minds.
All with different expectations, different rules. Yeah.
And they are. And so that is there are different expectations in different classrooms, because teachers are individuals.
Right.
Their personalities are going to come out in certain ways. Classroom management is going to look different. So there may be a set book of policies and procedures for the building. But every teacher is going to have something a little bit different. Does this teacher accept late work or not?
Right.
And those are just the ongoing conversations that you need to be having with your student. It's a little bit of a learning curve for parents. If you have an opportunity for that orientation night, for
open houses,
open
back to
houses,
school nights, yeah, participate in those.
Participate in those so that you understand what that means. But this is the big leagues.
Yeah, it's a lot to manage. One thing that I will say would be really helpful for parents to think about and conversation to have with their child is, to your point, how to juggle all of that, right? We're talking a little bit more about time management and schedules and transitioning in and out of classrooms and managing your homework and all those expectations for those 6 or 7 teachers that you have. And so having the conversation as we're preparing for those transitions, getting them ready for what that's going to look like is going to be really helpful. And then the other thing too is just starting to have some conversations around how they're going to cope with those changes or how they plan to keep themselves organized and things like that. I really like planners. And so when my daughter was transitioning to middle school, we talked about planners. She tried it. She hated it. It's not her thing. She would prefer to keep track of her things on Infinite Campus, where they log their, assignments and things like that. And she has a to-do list that she keeps on her cell phone. But that is what works best for her. And so for some students, they do like the planners. For some students, they like tracking it some form in a digital capacity. I've seen apps, I've seen different things. And so talking about that with students early on, I think helps, because sometimes what happens is we kind of just load students up once they get into the classroom and they have to figure out how they're going to keep track of all the work that they have to do, all their assignments, and juggling any activities that they're participating in, be it in school or outside of school. So I think it's helpful to have some of those conversations before first day of school, just to get them ready. Doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out before you enter it in, but I just think it helps in the planning process to prepare them and you on, what you can do to support with that as well during the school year, right? Some students I know have different individualized, plans where they do need a little bit more support and reminders and things like that. I think having those conversations also helps families understand, how they may need to engage with their students' learning, because it could look differently than it looked when they were in elementary.
Yeah, this is a topic that I feel really passionate about. And, we didn't talk about it for our kindergartners as much, but, I have a long background in special education. And so social stories are ways that we have eased transitions, even daily transitions with young learners, but they apply to any learner, not just, kiddos with learning differences. And then to your point, for our students that have an IEP, that have a 504, this is the time when you start to teach them how to advocate for themselves and how to communicate with the teachers. Understood.org is my favorite website for that. They have printables, they have downloadable guides, a ton of articles, and touching on just that point. If you have a student with a 504, they need to know what their accommodations are, because you are not going to be in the classroom with them. And we also need to remember that social studies teacher or math teacher, they're seeing 6 classes of those 20 kiddos. So they're going to need a little bit of help as well with the reminder. And there's a lot of great printables on there where you can remind your kiddo what their accommodations are to get them to a place in those sentence starters so that they know how to advocate. But advocating for yourself in this environment is across the board for all of our students. And we want them to communicate with their teachers. Had parent-teacher conferences a couple weeks ago. I know we were talking about that. And my daughter's math teacher was like, she's really good at letting me know if she's caught up on something, like if she's confused and she doesn't understand it. And I'm like, good. Yeah. Because that is something that we have drilled into our kiddos. So I actually am thrilled to hear that she's doing it. Yeah. And one of the time frames that she's been able to utilize for that is that advisory or homeroom, can go by a lot of different names, is oftentimes a class that middle schoolers are going to have on their class schedule. It's mandatory for everyone. It's an opportunity for teachers to really be able to provide that support and classroom and building expectations. But in this particular school year, my daughter's advisory teacher is her math teacher. And so it's been a great opportunity for her to be able to get a little bit of one-on-one time or small group time and be like, can you go over this again?
Some additional time.
And so talking about that is just another form of a social story, even for our older kiddos, where it's like, hey, you have that advisory class. You do know that that's a great opportunity to be able to ask for help. That's what that block of time is there for. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Right. And I think that's a great point, right, around that confidence building so that they can advocate. I think some of our students just kind of inherently have that confidence. So it's just a little bit easier for them to go out and ask questions and raise their hand. But that doesn't come naturally to everybody. And so understanding your student and kind of building that confidence, getting them ready to advocate for themselves in the classroom and outside the classroom. There's different circumstances where that would come up as well. And I think that that is also a really good segue into high school transition, right? Because in middle school, we're kind of preparing them. The point is to prepare them for high school. And so we're slowly transitioning them to be in the driver's seat, right? It's like they have their permit. They're not there yet. We're still there working with them. But we're getting them ready because once they get into high school, we really want them to be in the driver's seat of their education. We want them to be the ones communicating with their teachers and advocating for themselves. And so middle school is a really good opportunity to exercise those skills and build on that so that they're ready to go when they enter high school. So as I mentioned earlier, my daughter's in 9th grade, and Danielle knows this. Because I took the whole summer to mentally prepare myself because it was really emotional. Honestly, it's odd because I didn't really experience that transition as much for her in middle school because we had the pandemic happen.
Exactly.
And so it was a little bit different. She started her 7th grade year virtually. And so we didn't kind of have that transition that we would have normally had for middle school. And so I don't know. It kind of took me back to the transition into kindergarten in a lot of ways. One, as a parent, you just kind of realize that your baby is growing up. They're not a baby anymore.
They're not a baby.
They're not a baby anymore. And so, and understanding like, oh, wow, in 4 years, you're going to be off to college. You know, you're going to be away from me. And so it was a lot, I would say, as a parent. And so I just kind of want to give that heads up because I think sometimes we're trying to move along and we're excited and that's all great. But sometimes things kind of hit you out of nowhere, and it hit me out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, whatever. We're figuring out what school she's going to go to. It'll be fine. And then all of a sudden June hit and I'm like, oh my God. Oh, I'm actually going to have a freshman. What happened? You were talking about, in kindergarten, how you're like holding in tears. I'm like dropping her off for freshman orientation in the car crying like a crazy person.
No.
Because I can't believe that my baby is going into her freshman year. And
like
so,
a mother.
just prepare yourself for that. But I think the biggest piece of advice is, to your point, really allowing students during that transition into high school to really take the driver's seat in their education, really start to think through what they want their courses to look like. We talked a lot about what the graduation requirements were, what subjects she had to take, how many credits she needed for certain things. But just conversations like that, I think, really helped her in understanding what it was she wanted to do. She is an attendee of a KCPS school, so she has a lot of different options in terms of programming that she can do. And so one of the things that she's really interested in is the early college program. Yeah. So we were able to really have those conversations about what offerings are available, what are some of the things that they're interested in, because a lot of times those programs have prerequisites, right? And so we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do those, beginning years, freshman and sophomore year, so that you're ready to go for those programs that you want to do, junior, senior year, or, and whatever you want to do after graduation as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, this, to a certain degree, it can set you up for even after high school. And so from a parent's perspective, I think that and preparedness, if you will, it's also about understanding the staff that's in a building. So maybe we've gone from having school counselors, providing that social and emotional support and some of those developmentally appropriate lessons where they'll come into the classroom in elementary school. We know they're providing a lot of social and emotional support during the very complex years of middle school. And that needs to be named. Yeah. We have to, I know that I am the first one that will be like, these awkward middle schoolers, middle school is weird. Middle school is weird. And it's weird because those kids are going through a lot of changes and they really need so much support. But then when we get into high school, Nina, we're going to have social and emotional counselors, and then we're going to have like college and career counselors,
Right.
right? Or maybe they go by a slightly different name. But as a parent, it's like, do you know who your person is?
Right.
Is it by last name? Is it by grade level? And when
How
can
do you get
meet
in
with
contact
them?
with them?
Oh,
Right.
and is there an informational thing? Let's get to that and let's learn about that. And we talk about, we really highlight some of that stuff within not only the workbook, but the printed school guide on our website, linking you back up with the school's website so that you have a little bit of a understanding. Our intern last summer for Show Me KC Schools graduated from high school with her high school diploma and an associate's degree.
That's amazing.
From doing the early college program.
Right.
She was able to take advantage of it. And it's so cool. But that, to your point, middle school is the starter zone. You get to maybe choose an elective,
Right.
one elective. High school is totally different. And so that's when they really get to express themselves in other ways.
Right.
And start the journey of figuring out who they are, because Nina, I haven't 100% figured
I
it
think we're all figuring out, all changing over time, getting acclimated to who we are in this moment. But yeah, I think that's a really good point, right? So you're getting a taste of that in middle school, advocating for yourself, picking certain classes, things like that. And we just kind of build on that into high school in terms of, what classes you're taking, if you're doing AP classes, IB classes, if you're doing early college program, if you're going to manual tech or, a program like that where you're working on a certification. So there's a lot of different things that are available. So I think having those conversations really early on throughout their journey is really helpful. And just also setting intentions around like what they want their high school experience to look like. I think all of us can agree high school went by really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we did things that we wanted to do, and sometimes we missed opportunities. And so I think it's really helpful to call out certain experiences that they want to have, certain clubs and activities that they want to be a part of. I think it just helps keep us all accountable to working towards making sure those types of things happen for students. And this really start to dream about like what they want their lives to look like. We have an episode with Prep KC and talking about some of the work that they're doing, having those conversations with students around what they want their life to look like. So we can think about what are things that we can be doing now in middle school, in high school to help guide them to that journey.
Absolutely. I always love hearing it. I think, blast from the past, like it's always fun to engage, you and other friends and family to find out like what clubs were you in? What, we were talking about that at work one day,
Right.
I'm like, I lettered in choir. Please don't put the microphone in front of me for me to sing to you now. My sister-in-law, of course, was in journalism and the head of yearbook. And, and so every time I pick something up, I'm like, oh, look.
Yeah.
There's Marie and she helped with this one. And, and she's listed in the front of it. And so sometimes revisiting some of those memories also can give us the prompts that we need to say, hey, have you looked into this?
Right.
Have you thought about this?
Yeah. So that's a really great point. Thinking about what some of our experiences are and recognizing that things look a little bit different, right? But I think you're right. That's a great conversation starter. And so a lot of what we mentioned today is really conversations in preparing our students, reflection about our own experiences, preparing for things to look new and different as we transition our students through all these different grade levels, and just understanding that it's a long journey. Give yourself grace. Give your student grace. I think you brought up a good point about just where they are developmentally, like remembering that. We talk about middle school is awkward and, people joke about the attitudes in high school, but like remembering like they're growing. Our brains don't fully develop till we're 25.
No.
So like just understanding like where your student is, giving them some grace, helping guide them through that transition and understanding where they are, I think really helps aid in those transitions as well.
And being able to enjoy it, because at the end of the day, that's all that we remind each other of that. We're always trying to encourage each other to be the best version of ourselves. And that's what we're trying to do for our kids. And so
Right.
it's like this, let's enjoy the ride while we can.
Enjoy the moment. That's great. Well, Danielle, thank you. I love having these conversations. I feel like we peel the curtain back and people get to see us having conversations.
That's right.
That we always have
all day long.
the time.
It's all
So
good.
This is great. And hopefully our listeners found this helpful. We want to thank you all for listening. Please, please, please stay connected to us. And if you have not, please catch up on our past episodes. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.
Show Me KC Schools is committed to providing you with vital information that supports you while you support your child on their educational journey. Connect with us on social media at SMKCS and on YouTube at Show Me KC Schools and on all your favorite podcast platforms.